All right, now we're looking at top business headlines. And as I said earlier, we'll be looking at Nigeria's Naira that has emerged as the best performing currency in April. And also the other part of it is the Nigerian Breweries that has shut about 2 factories, lamenting economic downturn. To help us understand this better, I'm being joined by Gospel Obele, Chief Economist at Streetnomics. Gospel Obele, thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Having me, Lincoln. Really nice to speak with you again.
Of course, it's always nice to know that you're there to answer our call. We'll start with the Naira Gospel. Now, the Naira emerged as the top performing currency in April and has been projected to appreciate below 1,000 Naira to the US dollar. Is that good news for you after weeks of continuous decline?
Well, in context to best appreciating, we've seen that the exchange rate has really improved in the previous weeks owing to the series of actions that the central bank has taken, and that's really has been impressive. When Yemi Cardoso came into the space as central bank governor, we knew that his prospects and his profile and the work he's done will speak for him. Also, being the fact that he's got very good relationship with the current president Bola Ahmed Tinubu, we see it happening. Although it's been a roller coaster ride. In my own sense, what I would think is that what has happened here is that the Naira has the exchange rate has sort of moderated, being that interference by the apex body. I wouldn't necessarily say that it has appreciated. I would say it has moderated because the concept of appreciation is still a function of production and value processing and value add, as the case may be. We've always known that the value of Naira was way over bloated by virtue of speculative and leakage activities, some of which I've shared severally in our previous conversation. So the extent to which round tripping, speculations, leakages within the monetary or within the fiscal and general workings of the Nigerian economy, all right, all of that has led to where we were a couple of weeks ago. So what the central bank has done was just to interfere in that strategic cleanup of the market, to sort of moderate the market, to find this reasonable balance as to where to take off currency or monetary reforms as we go into the future. So for me, it's more of moderating than appreciative, than the appreciative stance of the currency at the moment.
Okay, so you're speaking more about the moderation of the Nigerian legal tender, but then we see that the CBN deployed a raft of policies to achieve this current success. Well, which of the policies do you think had the most impact on the moderation of the Naira?
For an economy like Nigeria, you can't really say one particular policy stands out because the complex nature of the Nigerian economy requires very interlinked, multifaceted rollouts of policy over a period of time to reach a particular objective. And that's what the central bank has done successfully well. Driven circulars, worked with customs, worked with bureau exchange operators, cleaned up in-house, introduced discounted rates, trying to sell below market price and all of those things. So it's been a combination of these different policies that are sort of interlinked that has brought down, the exchange as the case may be. So going forward to the future, it's to take a cue to realize that we need more policies that are very coherent and very interlinked in its nature to do better for the monetary system as well as the Nigerian economy. So I would say it's more or less a coordinated or coherent move of the central bank, vis-a-vis all of the circulars and policies that are introduced that led to the reduction.
Well, Gospel, there are still concerns about liquidity in some quarters, with some saying that foreign portfolio investors can decide to take out their money at will. For them, beyond CBN's interventions in the market, Nigeria needs to earn more foreign currencies and shore up its reserve. So do you share the same thoughts on this?
Yes, I do share the same thought because many of the policies that the central bank introduced at the time was also such that, was at the expense of something. Like I mentioned, trade-offs had to happen. In as much as the cluster of policies were coherent, we also saw a level of trade-off. The external reserves and all that was slightly being depleted. So the big ticket question will now be, how do you achieve sustainability of these reforms and also secure, a good stance when it comes to external reserves? And again, that's what takes me back again to the question of production and value add. All right. So in essence, we've successfully moderated. Now, to ensure that the currency scales in value, which is sustainability in this context, then we have to do the core thing that must be done. Now, when that core thing that must be done is being done, we realize that the currency would naturally rise in value and we'll be able to secure foreign exchange. So take, for instance, if we've been able to add value to goods and services, we have been able to promote the services sector, been able to promote access to market solution for SMEs who are willing and ready to export, realize that the currency would take off in value, and that would also fetch us FX receipt on the non-oil block that we're currently experiencing. All right, so it's a balancing out initiative if we choose to go on that sustainable route, as the case may be. The challenge or the fear I have for the central bank is that many of its policies, in as much as they've been very short-termist and quick fixes, all right, to moderate the market, they've also been at the trade-off of something. And I don't think that enough reasoning was put in place to ask ourselves, how do we really balance out on these trade-offs? And is what we're doing really sustainable towards, the value of the currency? So, but we're going to see how, initiatives will be played out as we go in the coming weeks, and how the market, would find its balance as we go on.
Yeah, so I'm talking about sustainability and quick fixes. On X handle, that was, I think, yesterday or day before yesterday, a couple of people started speculating that probably the CBN actually took money out of the reserve to boost liquidity and to shore up the Naira. Do you think that speculation is rife?
Well, I mean, in all fairness, like I mentioned, a lot of short-termist policies were being driven. Interlinked short-termist policies were being driven. I've also seen the recent fear or rising concern for the FX, for the external reserves. All right, and if you think about it very well, where else would the central bank, be able to, pull off, a whooping sum of dollars like that, to support the balancing out of the market and all that. So there's a sum of sense in that argument. All right. But then you've also seen cases where central bank has to loan some monies, in and out of coffers to just clean up and balance out on some obligations. However, it has not been sustainable, which is why I said that the argument in this case, in my own humble opinion, has been moderating of the market, not creating of the value of the currency. All right, which are two different things. Right, you can do anything to moderate a market. You can interfere in the demand and supply forces, firmly interfere in that floating mechanism, but we've not seen anything in view of sustainability.
Okay, let's now look at the other part of the discussion, the Nigerian breweries. Now, this company intends to shut down 2 of its 9 breweries as a recovery plan. That does not sound good, considering the trend of top business brands that have exited the Nigerian market. So how do you see it?
Yeah, it doesn't sound good. And we've seen that this has constantly played out in the last 2 weeks. Lots of companies, MZOR, and folks like that have raised concerns. GSK and Co, they've raised concerns about the sustainability of the manufacturing sector in Nigerian context, which again speaks to the quote unquote sustainability of this Naira exchange thing that we just talked about now. Right. So in my own opinion, it's a sign. It's an early sign that something is really going down within Nigerian breweries, and we need to pay very close attention. We've seen some big organizations, declare losses as well this year. So it's to constantly show to us that outside all of these dynamics or short-termist approach of trying to manage the currency, there is a worsening real sector. And once your real sector begins to worsen or goes constantly on a decline, then it tells you that the nation is consistently on a decline. All right, and nothing can change that. So that calls for us to begin to, look at the policy issues a bit more holistically in terms of what needs to be done to enable or to support institutions, especially institutions who have been around for a long time, to continue production and to do more for the real sector, as the case may be. That in itself is a burning issue that I think the FEC needs to address in its next meeting, as a priority conversation.
Okay, so talking about what needs to be done, let's just keep up with that particular slide that looked at the different areas or the key factors that's affecting the Nigerian economy that we saw a while ago. We're looking at inflation, foreign exchange shortages, high interest rates, global economic slowdown, supply chain disruptions, energy sector challenges, security concerns. These are big issues for an economy to deal with. So if you're going to be critical, looking at all these items, what are the steps you think can be taken, probably 1 or 2 that can help deal with these issues?
Well, to be honest, the world is like how one global economist put it, we're trying to deglobalize in the face of globalization, and the World Trade Organization put the term as reglobalization as the frontier, meaning how do you try to make sense of economic progress in the growing world or market of fragments, all right, interest rate, inflation, and all that of that. What I would think as an economist, thinking about it from Nigerian and Latin African context as well, is to look for low-hanging fruits because many of the challenges that are faced right now are also because we are not so much of a productive economy. So take for instance now, look at the services sector. All right, you don't necessarily need to move product from one place to point A to point B. You have a teeming army of young people who are constantly churning out ideas, products, and services on their laptops every day legally and working with organizations, within the Nigeria, within and across the borders. Sorry, yeah, across and within borders. All right. So how do we take advantage of the services sectors first of all? And so to say that we don't even have a national services policy to start with. Now, how do you empower SMEs who are ready and willing to export? How do you create a one-stop shop where they can access finance and where they can access market? Two critical things. Now, once we're being able to juggle that point, realize that it becomes a lot easier for us to be able to finance our local challenges, our infrastructure deficits and all that, and we're also able to secure foreign exchange as the case may be. Do not forget also that the narrative of interest rates strongly benefits the financial sector as against the real sector. So more reform efforts have to benefit the real sector to be able to create that balancing out as we go into the future. And the inflation dynamics we also deal with to a large extent is hinged heavily on food inflation and imported inflation. All right. So again, the cultural change has to also be introduced to encourage more Nigerians to buy Nigeria to grow the Naira. All right. Not just as a theme or as a song or as a campaign, but as an actual investment into the services and the real sector to enable all of these dynamics happen. Right. So once we can begin to touch on, I'm really convinced that we won't be able to deal with all of the challenges you just listed on the screen within the next 4 to 5, even 8 years of the current presidency. All right. Because many of these challenges are reinforced by global events and have come to stay. So the big ticket issue would be how do you relax the pressure of these different dynamics on the local economy, the local consumer, and the everyday business in Nigeria. All right. The only best way you can do that is to map out what you can control and then maximize the low-hanging fruit and begin to fix the structural issues and all that. And in many cases as well, there is need for Nigeria and many African countries to work better together to be able to hold their position on global issues. Because one of the major reasons why we are receiving those shocks and we're really receiving them badly is we're not being able to hold ourselves firmly. For instance, interest rates. Globally, central banks are increasing interest rates. And the fact that central banks are increasing interest rates doesn't necessarily mean that you interest rates, all right, to beat down inflation. We've seen that whilst that has worked in some economies, inflation has worse off in many economies. And the central bank, for instance, in Nigeria, has been on that wild goose chase, firefighting, vicious cycle of increasing interest rates to tame down inflation. And that has not happened. All right, it has not happened because our own inflationary dynamics, and to a very large extent, for many other developing and emerging markets, are very hinged on more structural and monetary issues. On more structural than monetary issues. So until we begin to look at these things from a different lens and look for more creative ways to, tap into our low-hanging fruit, I don't think we'll have any form of significant leap over the challenges. And we may keep getting worse off whilst the global market is trying to look for, very compromisable ways of dealing with the problems that we are faced with today.
And that would mean that what is happening on the global stage will not end soon, even if the government comes up with policies. Implementation is key. And also how we begin to see the results trickle in is something that we also may need to consider because we don't even know how soon we begin to see the effects of these changes, hinged on the fact that if the government can key into these different policies that you've actually outlined, we'll be able to see the needed change in terms of economic growth for Nigeria. That's going to be one big hurdle for the Nigerian government to cross if they're able to take that initiative. Gospel Obele, Chief Economist, Streetmomics, thank you so much for sharing your insights with us.
Have a lovely day. Bye.
Nigeria's Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Senator Heineken Lokpobiri, addressed concerns over the country's oil production shortfall in the first quarter. He attributed the decline to issues with the Trans-Niger pipeline and maintenance activities by oil companies. Assuring swift action, he stated that the problems have been resolved, anticipating a return to previous production levels of 1.7 million barrels per day. But then, is that the true situation of things? Esther Otusonya, Senior Investment Research Analyst at Meristem Securities Limited, joins me to help us understand this. Thank you so much, Esther, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So the dwindling production capacity and volumes in Nigeria have always been a bone of contention among local and international players since last year, with the Nigerian government insisting production can be ramped up to about 1.78 barrels per day. But now, this is where we are. Has reality set in?
Well, since the new administration came in, we've improvement in the oil output for the country. But this year alone, there's been 2 consecutive monthly declines in February and March, and the March figure is like the lowest since July last year. So there's still a lot of issues in the Nigerian oil and gas sector, which has been impeding how much output we can actually produce. But for Q1, it was due to the Trans-Niger pipeline issues, and this pipeline actually transports crude oil from oil fields in the Niger Delta region to export terminals where they are like transported to the export destination. So like many other oil infrastructure systems in the Niger Delta, this pipeline has faced challenges like vandalism, theft, and oil sabotage as well. I think this has been part of the reason why we saw that the reduction in oil production during the quarter. But when we look at quarter-on-quarter basis, there's actually been an improvement, even if it is quite minimal for the country. So there's also maintenance activities by some oil companies during this period. I mean, it's the best time for oil companies to do their maintenance on their structure, and it's the beginning of the year, so there was a lot of that happening, and this kind of like reduced the output from major terminals across the country.
So then what are the potential implications of Nigeria's oil production shortfall on government's revenue, expenditure, and foreign exchange earnings?
Okay, look, Nigeria is still quite dependent on oil revenue, and looking at the 2024 budget approved at about 28.66 trillion, out of which revenue is projected at 19.5 to while budget is around 9.18. So for oil revenue from this is actually still quite substantial, around 15 trillion, and the government has made like underlying assumptions of oil price at like 77.696 dollars per barrel, and estimated output of like 1.78, like you mentioned, million barrels per day. But with these Q1 numbers, it just means oil production at 1.33 million barrels per day. It just means we're significantly below the budgeted outputs, which means the country might not meet its budgeted oil revenue for this year, and that means the country will be resorting to like more budget deficit, or more raising this, supporting the budget through debt. So, but we note that there's been like an increase in oil prices, which actually might bring some level of respite, not quite much, but banking on high crude prices isn't quite sustainable for the country. So definitely reduced oil receipts will mean lower FX for the fiscal authorities, and really FX supply is needed right now from the fiscal end as well, just to complement the reforms that the CBN has been doing in the FS markets.
Obviously, Nigeria's challenges in the oil and gas sector are actually hydra-headed. The issues around pipeline vandalism, theft, forex issues are there. And when we look at it on the global scale, we see that there are some continents or countries who are trying as much as possible to ramp up production to meet their domestic demand, and of course for exports to other countries or other continents. But then let's look at it from that particular angle. We have a Nigerian crude oil market that has this commodity on the high seas, and it is finding it hard to get buyers for it. Why? Because some other countries are trying as much as possible to improve on production and shore up what they have. So with unsold crude accumulating, is Europe's refinery maintenance impacting the Nigerian oil market negatively or positively? Or is there an alternative market that Nigeria is yet to explore and exploit?
Definitely, the Europe accounts for like the largest of Nigeria's export destination, and as such, the refinery maintenance that is ongoing there would just cause unsold crude in the Nigerian market to continue to accumulate. But the refinery's maintenance should be at its continuing phase for now. It is not expected to extend through the whole of Q2, and as such, due to that, we expect that the unsold crude for the Nigerian aid will kind of like become steady in the near term. Nigeria will be able to like export crude at a in the near term with less like accumulation. I mean, even the Dangote refinery is in operation, and we have like it just means we have another buyer of our crude. But despite that, the country still needs to optimize and look for more trade partners for its crude, just to mitigate the impact of such circumstances in the future. And there's been quite a lot of interest in the country's energy sector. But we know it's been quite tilted to the gas rather than the oil. But the government has actually made some outings in recent times that just to be able to like reach strategic partnership with some countries and investors that will be beneficial for the country. So it is not just reaching strategic partnership. There's still need for stability in the country oil and gas in the country's oil and gas sector itself. I mean, that is when we can actually enhance Nigeria's credibility in the eyes of these international traders as well.
Well,
So there's a lot still needs to be done in the country's oil and gas sector.
Well, a lot of players are actually still concerned about how much stability can come into that sector as it regards Nigeria, because when we still talk about issues around international market dynamics, there's also the lingering issue around geopolitical tensions and multilateral decisions flying here and there. And how is that impacting or influencing Nigeria's oil prices and production levels?
Okay, well, for Nigeria, well, the Israel-Palestine war has initially had no significant risks to global oil prices because neither of the adversaries were major players in the oil sector, in the global oil market. But with the involvement of Iran, I mean, one of the largest producers of oil, launching missiles at Israel last week, this has just elevated the geopolitical risk premium and leading to a potential impact on supply levels globally. But we also saw Brent crude surge as high as $92 per barrel last week Fridays. But seeing for Nigeria, there is no direct impact to our production levels because we are not actively in the war and we do not have so much direct trade relationship with the countries involved. But so there's no impact. We do not expect a lot of impact for Nigeria's oil production level due to the war. But for prices, I mean, we stand to benefit if crude prices will continue to elevate due to the increased geopolitical risk premium from the Israel-Palestinian war.
So basically, the bulk of the challenges that Nigeria is facing as regards production levels in the crude oil has to do with domestic problems. But here is it. We have a Libya that is said to have overtaken Nigeria in terms of production levels. And Angola is also gaining ground in the Indian energy markets. Can Nigeria stay competitive in, of course, looking at these dynamics?
Okay, well, like I mentioned earlier, there's been a lot done from the federal government to actually reach partnership with some countries, but really to stay competitive, it has to be what is being done on the Nigerian space to improve our existing structures and also like tackle the challenges that are existing in the sector, which are quite structural. We have insecurities, or we have vandalism, oil theft, and even the fact that some IOCs are moving from onshore to offshore. I mean, this just means that the government has a lot to do to be able to like to be able to improve the quality of the food coming out of the Nigerian market, and also investments in the Nigerian market. Because it is when there is enough investment, that is when our output will be able to be we'll be able to accelerate. I mean, so for in that end, to be competitive, we have to tackle the challenges on the Nigerian end that before we are able to go into other markets. I know Libya and Angola specifically after leaving the OPEC, and they've been making some strides in that end. But to be competitive, we need to tackle challenges in Nigeria before we can be able to even play better in the global space.
There's one other challenge that we need to talk about before we wrap it up on the show this morning. We talked about it last week, and that had to do with the issue around fuel subsidies, whether it's being paid or not. The Nigerian government has come out to vehemently say that it is no more paying subsidies, but then back end, it's been speculated that subsidies are being paid, because when you look at the fluctuation in terms of crude oil pricing, imports, and what we have at the pump that has been static despite the fluctuation in the global markets, then it could only speak more to the fact that something is being done back end to keep that price peg at that particular amount between 700 and 500 in some regions. Now, what is the issue as regards managing fuel imports and subsidies? And why does it seem as though the Nigerian government is saying it's not paying? I mean, we need to have an understanding of what is going on.
Well, following the subsidy removal last year, there was licenses given to downstream oil and gas companies for the importation of petroleum products into the country. But these companies face challenges in obtaining sufficient foreign exchange to actually import these products, and this is due to the continued depreciation of Naira. So NNPC has resumed, just like you mentioned, the role as the sole importer of petroleum products, and despite the volatilities in oil prices and also depreciation of Naira, which would increase the cost of bringing in these products into the country, oil prices has remained unchanged since petroleum product prices has remained largely unchanged since last year. So it might be argued that subsidy is back, but the government has actually negated this, and for the near term, fortunately, with Dangote refinery set to supply petroleum products into the Nigerian markets, the local market, oil marketers can actually get this product directly from this refinery, from Dangote refinery, and not rely on importation. This should relieve the pressure of the government as a sole importer in the near term, and that way there won't be need for subsidy. I mean, if the government is no longer there as a middleman bringing the product into the country, the oil marketers can get directly from the refinery, so there won't be need for subsidy. So in the near term, I think things should actually become better. There should be more clarity and transparency in that from that end about subsidy and oil prices as well generally.
So we also see an NNPC Limited that is struggling to secure petrol due to cash flow issues. Now, at this point, how can Nigeria improve its payment structure with international traders and local refineries?
Okay, for one, improving Nigeria's payment structure with international traders and local refineries will require like addressing several factors. But for one, it will be more transparency from the government, and like we already know like NNPC, the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, is already like an for-profit oil company. Before it wasn't, and it was just like a government-owned corporation. I mean, with this already put in place, it means that we should expect more transparent financial reporting from NNPC. I mean, if that is already what is happening, what is being put in place, there will be the inclination to actually improve the payment structure with international traders, and also the country can actually encourage like partnership with public and private sectors in the development of like infrastructure as well. And this just kind of like mitigates the fiscal risk for the government, and that way there will be cash flow will be kind of like steady, and there won't be like hindrances in cash flow. Or that way also we can eventually improve the payment structure with international traders, and our credit worthiness and credibility in the eyes of traders and local refineries as well.
So that will also bring about some improved investments into the sector. Are you affirming that?
Yes, definitely. I mean, eventually, when the old reforms eventually starts to work together, and we start seeing changes, this is when we can actually have investment into the sectors, which we've not been seeing for a long time right now. So with everything put in place, continuous reforms and continuous commitments to tackling the challenges in the oil and gas sector, head on, all of the challenges head on. I think with the oil and gas, the Nigerian oil and gas be a preferable destination for energy investment from both local and foreign investors as well. So I think we're actually working in line towards that end for now.
But then, Esther, one critical area that might be a major concern for these investors is the volatility in these oil producing regions that we have in the country in terms of vandalism and sabotage in terms of the facilities that are being used for transporting crude. Now, when we continue to have pipeline vandalism, theft, and this unrest in these communities, do you think the investors will still be wanting to come with their funds to invest in that sector?
Well, no. If this should continue, investors want, want to continue investing in the sector, and that's why we've seen some oil and gas, international oil and gas companies trying to like divert their assets to or offshore than onshore, where there's been a lot of securities issues, challenges with communities, and infrastructural deficiencies as well. So eventually, if we should see these challenges persist, we won't receive the investment as much as we want to. But that's just why the government has to tackle these issues head on, because really just the investment we have right now in the oil and gas sector cannot suffice for where we want the oil and gas sector to be. There's need for more investment inflow into the sector than just what we are seeing right now. There's need for like a significantly a large amount of investment to come into the sector to revive this existing structure, and not just in the upstream level. It is across the value chain, upstream, midstream, the refineries, and downstream as well. There's just need for a lot of investment in the Nigerian energy sector just to revive the sector and take the sector to where we really want to be. So for security concerns, I know the new administrations have been doing a lot to tackle that. There's been some illegal oil connection that's been targeted in recent times, and oil theft as well, but there's still much that needs to be done. There's a lot of infrastructural damage that's been done that needs to be done, that needs to be addressed to just ensure that output disruptions is just at the minimal. I mean, if the margin in the sector, upstream, midstream, downstream, if there's enough margin in the sector, I mean, that's when investors will see the investment attractive enough for to come into the country.
So, Esther, before I let you go, you've talked about, you've actually recommended a raft of measures that need to be put in place. You've also talked about what the Nigerian government would need to do in its own capacity to deal with the endemic issues when it comes to oil production. A couple of months back, the Nigerian government demanded from OPEC Plus that production quotas should be improved. Of course, that is what it's asked for. But then that was when the speculation and the challenge around if Nigeria had the capacity to improve on what it can produce. And now we've seen a dwindle to about 1.2 million barrels per day, and the target is about 1.78 million barrels per day. Do you think if all these measures are put in place, will Nigeria be able to hit that particular mark, and how long do you think it will take?
Okay, saying that in January we did around 1.4, and but February and March it's resided a bit. So it is possible for us to actually reach 1.5 million barrels per day as per the OPEC quota. I mean, looking at what we've been doing in previous time before the pre-pandemic time, we've seen that we actually have the capacity to do so. So these challenges just need to be addressed. We have the capacity to meet 1.5 million barrels per day production and even maybe exceed it. But reaching 1.78 of the government assumptions in the budget might be too much at the moment. But reaching the OPEC quota is very much possible for the country to reach in the near term. So just addressing these challenges, it isn't something that can be done just in a few months. I mean, since the new administration came in, and they've been doing so much in this end, but there's still much that needs to be done, much in security, much in corruption, much in infrastructural deficiency, and even environmental challenges as well for these oil and gas companies. So it is when these issues are addressed and when investors perceive that these issues are getting addressed, maybe getting better, that is when we will see investment. Investment are really what is going to drive the oil sector's performance towards where we want it to be. So the investment is really what the government is trying to bring into the sector, and they've been committed to it. I hope it continues in the near term for us to really get the benefits of oil for the country as a whole.
Okay, 1.7 million barrels, that's a no. 1.5 million barrels, that's a maybe. And that's not bad if Nigeria can hit those numbers. Esther Otosonya, Senior Investment Research Analyst at Meristem Securities Limited, thank you so much for your profound contribution on the show.